Thank you for joining us today for this episode of the All Things Talent podcast hosted by Armstrong Craven. I'm Nina Johnson, Senior Commercial Insights Manager, working closely with the business and external clients to keep abreast of talent-related developments in the changing corporate landscape. In today's episode, we explore some of the nuances around talent intelligence and its application in today's business environment. We hope you enjoy it. According to Forbes, we are now in the age of talent intelligence. During the 30 plus years, Armstrong Craven has been delivering research-driven talent solutions to our international client base. We have seen huge leaps forward in technology. There's a vast amount of data available these days. The challenge is being able to distill this data into actionable insight. We thought this would be a good point to get our Director of Insight and Talent Analytics, Elizebeth Birrell, to share some thoughts around where talent intelligence is at now and where she thinks it is heading. According to Forbes, we are now in the age of talent intelligence. During the 30 plus years that Armstrong Craven has been delivering research-driven talent solutions to our client base, we've seen huge leap forward in technology. There's a vast amount of data available these days. The challenge is being able to distill this into actionable insight. We thought this would be a good point to get our Director of Insight and Talent Analytics, Elizebeth Birrell, to share some thoughts around where talent intelligence is at now and where she thinks it is heading. Hello, Elizebeth. So first question would be, how would you define talent intelligence?
So talent intelligence is harnessing the power of external labour market data to bring a further 180 view. So clients have people analytics, workforce analytics, HR analytics teams, which give them a really good lens on the talent they've got internally, how that progresses its skills and qualities. Bringing in external labour market data just completes that picture. So talent intelligence is a full 360 view, not only the talent we have internally, what we are capable of, where we shine and where we're lacking, but also what's out there in the market, how we benchmark and what our talent and market competitors have.
And what's your view on the rise of AI and machine learning in the TI space?
So two things. We are, as a team, really excited about the availability of consumer-ready AI tools and apps. And we have started to explore where we can safely, compliantly add efficiency to the way the team works using something like a GPT-4. It has its drawbacks, which I think perhaps are not discussed enough, but there are certainly places where we can supercharge something like internal content delivery and research using a web-enabled tool. I say GPT-4 and not ChatGPT because it is only recently that the tool that does have access to the web and is more up to date than 2021, I believe, has been available free to teams like mine. And in our exploration, we've certainly found that it can speed up research when it comes to finding out what we don't know. It is worth anyone in talent acquisition more generally testing a tool like GPT-4 or Forefront possibly, that is a different way in, to see if it can bring data to the table quicker. So something like writing a job description for a role that you don't fully understand the elements of, as long as it is internal and as long as we don't plug any confidential data into the tool, it is a really quick way of gathering everything there is to know on a particular subject, getting that rendered in a form that's useful to you. Now, the thing that we are well aware of, the thing that I think teams should have concerns about, is that the tool is not applying any kind of creativity or human intelligence to this process. It is really, really keen to please users. And so not only will it outright make something up if it feels there is a gap to be filled and it understands the size of that gap, it will even cite sources that don't exist from URLs that look incredibly convincing. So extensions that could exist, websites that do exist, completely fabricated URLs to source data that it knows we want to find. And so we have to be really critical when we use it. There have already been cases in big corporates of teams playing around with it and feeding in really, really sensitive information, confidential data about products that are not yet on the market. And so we have to be trying to get out more than we put in and not put in anything that is sensitive or confidential, which is really just basic web behavior at work, isn't it? There is a lot that the consumer ready tools can do for individuals to gain efficiency, but I am wary of their use as part of a corporate process because we can't put in anything sensitive and we can't always trust what comes out. And so certainly those ghost sources, they call it hallucinations, at least with ChatGPT, will hallucinate a full source that looks like a medical journal and cite to that source, which is an amazing thing, but it means we've got to be incredibly wary about what comes out.
That's really interesting. I wasn't aware that it actually made things up to that extent.
I can show you some examples, and they are so convincing, which is scary, to the extent that I could see how somebody would cite this source, quote this article that has never existed, and then put that source in the citations for future reference. They really do look as if they could exist. And so there is an element of wariness. But when it comes to supercharging your Googling for loads and loads of different articles or loads of different job descriptions or role profiles and folding those all neatly in corporate language, it really does have a lot of potential. And the same for the apps and widgets that are coming out now to allow us to answer very basic transactional emails, to do our scheduling. It has a huge amount of potential, not just in TA, but for anyone in a corporate role where they are managing a calendar, sending out emails, responding to inquiries. There's certainly a huge amount more we could do with it, but we are proceeding with caution as we do when things are brand new, and it's got a long way to come.
Do you have a kind of test process for new tools that you come across?
Yeah, so we're actually really rigorous. We are using AI and machine learning in a more embedded way to identify individuals for talent intelligence. So we're not working on the recruitment side, we're purely consulting, but building a perfect, quote unquote, talent pool, counting only what counts, including individuals who are relevant, and only those individuals who are relevant is at the core of all the work that anyone's doing in talent intelligence. And the tools that we use now to do that work combine Boolean search, the science of search, which we've got a very refined process for, with AI and machine learning enabled sourcing, which allows us to know what we don't know, to make suggestions, to rework those personas, and to take some guesses about what should be in an individual's profile. And we went through, and it's open-ended, a very rigorous process to find the combination of several smaller, newer tools and suppliers that are going to give us maximum efficiency and the best results, but that will also be compliant. And I think that that is a huge part of what the offering for external talent intelligence is to clients now. A TA team does not necessarily have the resource to put a team on getting to every demo, pricing up all these tools, testing their compliance, both internally against the principles that we understand, but then also, of course, using external legal support to be certain that everything we do is compliant, because that responsibility sits not with the supplier, but ultimately with us. Understanding how those tools fit together and what the ROI would be on any of those is a process that takes up a huge amount of my time and the time of other members of my team. And so clients are able, when they come to us, to effectively outsource both the risk of adopting a tool that is new, using a methodology that maybe they're using for the first time and aren't fully familiar with, and also the time it takes to fully understand how the tools work, what the good ones look like, and whether they are compliant. Of course, we've been for more than 30 years now sending identifying personal information to clients who are based in regions all over the world. And so data privacy is something we've got to be 100% compliant on all the time. In most cases, the standards that GDPR holds us to are rigorous enough that if we are consistent globally against that standard, we are always compliant. But as you will know, there are markets that have their own special rules and regs about data collection and processing. Knowing that we are on point following all of those and remaining compliant everywhere that we work is so important when you have clients, not only of the scale of the clients that we work with, but also clients working in highly regulated industries on really sensitive and really confidential work.
Definitely, yes. And You obviously get a view into the internal talent intelligence capability within organisations, and I've certainly noticed a rise in talent intelligence teams in terms of within our clients. What's your view on how this is evolving?
So it's been a really interesting few years for internal TI. There was a bit of a boom that we observed 3 to 5 years ago. Major tech clients and major pharma were the first really to go up that curve of embedding a small amount of TI capability in their TA teams. And that's been fantastic news for us, because anything that raises awareness that talent intelligence is out there being delivered and can create value ultimately is a win for me and for my team as well. Typically in the TA teams, the TI capability started with sourcing. So it was better sourcing and using some of those consumer ready TI tools, like a LinkedIn Talent Insights, let's say, to power up talent acquisition capability. Now, they are not quite typically at the level where they could deliver full end-to-end TI to engage stakeholders, but they are making a case for us to their stakeholders, which is fantastic news for us. And over time, we've started to shift our offering to respond better to those big clients who've got embedded TI capability. So that might be coming in where their team leaves off if they've got the secondary data covered, but they can't gather that primary data from the position that they are in. Or it might be giving them additional capacity, because these are typically 2 or 3 or 4 heads in a global service centre or centre of excellence rather than a fully fledged TI team. And then there is also giving them the benefit of the experience of a team who have been delivering solutions like this for 30 plus years, having looked at data like this for every major region, for every major bucket of roles across all industries for so many years. The team also bring a huge amount of experience to the table, because the consumer ready TI tools can give us a huge amount of data, which is great news for everybody. But the skill set that we need to develop is understanding what that data is telling us and how we respond to that data to do something, to solve a problem. And that's where the team really shine. We've seen so much of this data. We know straight away that's a challenge, that's a red flag, that's a perfectly sustainable, healthy talent pool size for that role in that region. And that is often capability that those internal TI teams are just now starting to bring to the table. The other shift that we've seen is in clients asking us to help them to build internal TI capability. So that is running end-to-end training programs, co-authoring small projects to get a little ROI and embed those skills in their teams, supporting them to see what roles exist in TI and how to find a best first hire in talent intelligence and how to build those fledgling teams. So we work really well alongside clients who have their own embedded TI capability, but we have had to shift how we approach that market. And those are really strong, healthy relationships, because, of course, those clients who have embraced TI enough to start to think about having internal research capability are also the clients who really see the value of the work that Armstrong Craven's TA team is able to deliver.
Thank you. Yeah. And what do you see as the benefit of being a third party? You mentioned primary data before. Can you just clarify what you mean by primary data?
Absolutely. So it's primary data because it's being gathered for the first time for a TI purpose. So the secondary data is published or captured elsewhere. We subscribe to it or we go out and get it, but it's already been gathered. Whereas the primary data, we're going out and capturing that from talent pool respondents for the first time. And so we would identify the right individuals within a really granular talent pool who are exactly the people that would be able to answer the question the client has put to us. And then we take something like a market research approach, where we treat individuals as respondents. There's no role, they're not in process and experts in their function or in working in their region. And then we gather live on the ground talent data about that particular talent market today from those individuals. Now, all that data will be anonymized and aggregated, and then we feed that back to our clients in terms of the overarching themes, any trends that we can spot, any challenges that we found in that talent market, and how individuals we've spoken to have overcome those challenges. Typically, our respondents are either individuals in the target talent pool, so let's say software developers in Mumbai, or they will be the individuals who hire and develop the talent pool that we're talking about, because, of course, they have a different lens on how challenging is it to hire here, what profiles are scarce to find, what profiles are expensive to find, how do individuals move up and get promoted and advance in this talent pool. And so quite often we're taking a blended approach and speaking to two respondent groups. Clients internally can't usually hold these calls because, of course, if you get a call from a huge employer out there as a potential candidate, and that is still the natural way that a respondent would view that call, you position that data in a certain way. And so we find we get much better transparency from individuals when we speak to them about who's an exciting employer to work for. What are you looking for in a role? How do you like to be approached? What are your salary and comps and bends expectations? Because individuals understand we're an independent third party. We're gathering data for research. They are not in process, so they can be completely honest with us. And often we find out things in those markets from those calls that our client with the best internal team in the world could not find out because individuals who viewed themselves as potential candidates wouldn't choose to share that information.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned before about measuring return on investment in the TI space. So what does that look like? How do you measure ROI?
So that really depends on the service line that we're developing for the client. What we offer really starts with mapping, so sending over a map of individuals just purely from that secondary data. A map might save a client from going to external search and all the costs that that includes. It might even potentially save a client from needing to go to fill that role altogether because they take a look at the external market, they have a benchmark for their internal talent, they have a better view of the quality there. And so we can either cut down or completely eliminate the need for an expensive external executive search. Having that data, particularly when the team are able to offer a market summary alongside it, which is some of the power, I think, of working with the TI team, is that the data we gather out in the market is for the client. We've gathered it on their behalf. Our job is to feed it all back in so that their internal TA team know everything we know about that market, about hiring that role. That might mean that when they go to look for that role again in 3 months or 3 years, they know everything they need about that market to make a great first hire. They know who's out there, they know what good looks like, they know which the talent competitors are that they should target, and they know how to hire effectively in those markets because we've been out there speaking to people, in which case we have really eliminated the need for 6 months of a data gathering exercise where we look for the wrong profile in the wrong place and everyone is too expensive and they wouldn't work for us anyway. And therefore, for mapping, it's really quite easy to measure ROI because it stacks up against other processes and we know what the cost is of going out to make a hire in the senior individual, but also the cost of a failed recruit we know is it's getting ever higher. But the last cost that I heard for the UK was something like 18,000 to go out, find the right person, and then find that they're not the right fit and we need to go out to market again. It's the market data really that eliminates that risk for a client. Now, for a global strategic talent insights project, it's much more difficult to measure ROI because the question is, if not this, then what? So if a client wants to put an existing function, create a hub for that function globally, they need to find the right location to put those individuals to find high quality talent. Often they are looking for a hub that is lower cost than the alternative at maybe HQ location. And there are a load of factors then that come into play if it's a new market. Ease of doing business, levels of corruption, how well their employer brand plays in this market. Now, we absolutely do have case studies of clients who have gone on from the data that my team has gathered for them and the recommendations they've made to establish hubs for specific talent in the location that we have suggested based on secondary data that says there's good talent with all those skills and plenty of it, and primary data that says individuals in that talent pool would be excited to speak to our client, they would be accessible to our client from an EVP perspective, and that it would be cost effective to do that exercise there. And you can imagine how much the ROI scales as compared to not making that change and continuing to hire software engineering talent very expensively in HQ location, or choosing the wrong location, finding it incredibly challenging to hire and spending 3 years or 5 years trying to open a hub that you simply cannot staff. And therefore, those roles are going unfilled. That capability is not serving the rest of the business. And ultimately, companies are having to pull out of markets that are not suitable. And so while it is difficult to pin an exact figure on that, because if not this, then what, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of wasted revenue trying to establish groups of, could be hundreds of individuals doing a specific task that needs to be done day. And so I really think that the ROI on good talent intelligence in the right place at the right time is really, really significant in these bigger strategic insight projects.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm just thinking about we've been doing insight projects for many, many years, and there used to be a PDF document that was emailed over to our client contact. The danger in that situation would often be that information would stay in someone's inbox, essentially. What are the ways that Armstrong Craven has been trying to make sure that the data is available in different formats? And do you have any predictions about the future of talent intelligence?
So the first thing that we will continue to see is that those industries that haven't really embraced TI will continue to go up that curve. So where the big tech companies went with embedding TI into their TA teams, an industrial or a financial services client who might be a little in a different place on that curve, I think will continue to follow tech up. And so within a couple of years, I would be very surprised if all of our major clients didn't have their own dedicated internal TI capability. Now, we sometimes talk about talent intelligence being a bit of a talent acquisition killer, as in it eliminates the need for a lot of the work that is more commodified or more transactional within talent acquisition. You will probably never hear me make that claim. Well, it takes a lot of the day-to-day work that doesn't necessarily need to be done by humans off the desks of TA professionals. I don't think we will ever see any reduction in the need for humans to look at the profiles and capabilities of humans to do jobs that ultimately serve humans in places. Nothing that we have seen from the consumer-ready AI and machine learning enabled data tools, as exciting as they are, and we love them, nothing that we have seen from those tools makes me think that we won't need talent acquisition teams to be people looking for people to fill roles in the future. I think it will take off them some of their day-to-day to allow them to think more creatively, and my hope is that there will be natural career transitions for some individuals in TA to join the TI side or play a dual role, but ultimately that just empowers TA professionals in particular to be more proactive, less reactive, to have more strategic roles, to have bigger remits. And personally, I would like to see TI get a seat at the table alongside TA, and then both of those ultimately to be elevated to the status of one of the major central functions, because of course the talent that goes into an organization is that organization. And so we're very happy to continue traveling up that curve with clients and excited about the future in terms of the tools that will give us access to. But I don't think that TI is a TA killer any more than AI is going to take away the jobs of the millions of people who I think are starting to believe that everything they do can be automated. You can love automation and want to use the new tools that are available without being concerned that there is any meaningful replacement for human beings in the role that our clients are in, or indeed the role that my team is in.
And I guess one thought around that is we're seeing a big rise in strategic workforce planning, and I'm certainly seeing some TA professionals making the transition into that side of things, and that will always need the consultation with the business in order to really understand what future needs might be, etc. So again, I guess it's the people need to be involved in the people-related decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything that gives TA a more strategic role, a more embedded role, is fantastic for us and I think the wider industry. I would be really interested to see strategic workforce planning support TA professionals to bridge the gap between the external labour market data that they're getting from us and providers like us and their own internal HR data or workforce data, because a challenge that we still see all the time is that we are gathering externally data that our clients should be able to gather internally, but they are not plugged into the right people, or there is an element of ownership and competition coming from the people analytics or data analytics part of the business, because those functions have traditionally reported through elsewhere, as opposed to acting as service functions. Sometimes they are not enabling their talent acquisition counterparts to see the data they need when they need it, so they can provide an effective benchmark. And the place we see that most often is probably in working to build more representative teams. So DE&I work. There is no reason that an individual who's senior in talent acquisition shouldn't know how well they are currently doing as an organisation in building truly representative teams in all their roles, in all their markets. That is the great good work, and we should all be doing it. But it is important for organisations to know where they stand. And we still see that we set up some peer organisations and a peer industry in order to test what the market bears in terms of representation levels, and how our clients can set a target that is both ambitious and achievable in terms of building a representative team. And the bit of data that we end up filling in as we deliver, because the client is not able to access that data, is how are they doing? Where do they sit? And of course, that's a critical bit of comparison data. Are they ahead of their industry by miles and doing the best that could be done, ambitious but achievable being the objective here? Or are they trailing behind their talent competitors, trailing behind their industry in building those representative teams? That is absolutely data that businesses that already have a target when it comes to greater equity and equality at work, they should be able to see that data. And frequently it is viewed as sensitive and ownership sits elsewhere, and talent acquisition doesn't have access to that, which is, I hope, a problem that the merge into a bigger strategic workforce planning role will solve, because it brings together those two elements of the internal and the external.
Yes, I think it's an exciting time in terms of the talent space generally, and how that interacts with the business strategy and technology development. So thank you very much, Elizabeth, for joining me for this interview. It's been a fascinating discussion, and we look forward to perhaps reconnecting in a year or so and seeing what's changed. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do subscribe to our podcast. For more information on how your organisation could benefit from our talent intelligence services, visit armstrongcraven.com.